Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And wow, the Cats really do have a habit of making everyone look stupid, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the first time that we ever fully predicted, both of us at the same time, to a loss. And of course, we come out and get one of the biggest wins in program history. And you know what? Fine with it, but they really did pick a week to make everybody look stupid.
I'll take it. And to our credit, we didn't say that, Oklahoma was invincible. In fact, we said quite the opposite. We said that they're a very beatable team.
Yeah, that is true.
Lo and behold, but we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. If you didn't hear somehow and you're listening to this podcast, I don't know how you got here if you haven't heard of the result, but I suppose it's possible. It was a massive, a big
win.
Big Wildcat victory versus number 6 in the country, Oklahoma, in Norman, 41-34. That 34 comes from a garbage time touchdown in which Dillon Gabriel pulled the stereotype of Adrian Martinez. Dillon Gabriel is padding his stats. And, it really is just what a difference 1 week can make, huh?
Yeah, you're telling me. But I mean, so much went into this. And I mean, like, it's hard not to mention something right now that won't be relevant later. So I don't want to spoil any of the takes or anything. Mm-hmm. So we might as well just get right into it, and start talking about important stuff.
Yeah. But just before that, we've won 3 of the last 4 meetings. Chris Kleiman does not lose to OU without the referee's interference of a double kick. And this has moved Kansas State to number 25 in the country, leapfrogging the most aggressively mid team in the country. So there is that. Let's move into the general takeaways from game day. First one is last week we were saying we hoped we got half of what Adrian Martinez was at Nebraska. Nebraska said, you want half, I'll give you double. And I absolutely, for everything negative that we said about him last week, he decided to throw that right back in our face. And honestly, I love him for it.
Yeah. I mean, he's been hearing a lot and the noise has been getting louder and louder around his performance. And he really picked quite a time to have arguably the best game in his entire career, which is saying quite a bit considering that he's in his 5th season now of starting. So, I mean, there's really not a negative thing that you can take away from his performance. I'd say it was one of the best QB performances I've ever seen, and he really did do. He obviously earns the game ball. I mean, there's no question. But he got a helmet sticker on a college football final for doing really good. And I mean, yeah, the fan base was lobbing a lot of negative stuff around about him. People have been doing that since week 1. So this should silence the haters and really convert the fan base, assuming that he continues to do even half of what he did against OU, because that would be an acceptable QB performance, I think, in most games. Yeah. But yeah, what an incredible performance. There's not enough superlatives in the world to describe it, I think.
Yeah. Next general takeaway is, again, in a reversal of last week, Klein came out with a plan. Whereas last week I said I didn't really know what Colin Klein's plan was. This one, I not only knew what his plan was, but I loved his plan. Because the entire game plan, I'm trying not to spoil the grade I'm going to give him for game day grades, but from this segment you can tell it's high. His entire game plan was based off of numbers and the passing strength. We were taking the free access yards. We were throwing the bubble screen to Phillip Brooks when we had numbers on the outside. We were willing to run the ball when we had numbers on the inside. And we were willing to use Adrian Martinez as a +1 in the running game, which made everything about the offense work so much better because it wasn't an offense where we were just throwing things at the wall or lack thereof in terms of throwing. We were genuinely looking at what they were giving us, looking at how to attack the defense numbers wise, and then doing it. And it's awesome. And I love it. Connor, what do you think?
I also love it. It felt well off the bat, the execution was significantly better this week. Clearly everybody got a wake up call this past week, and they put forth significantly better effort across the board, and it was exactly what we've been hoping for, I think. Honestly, this performance kind of lends itself to the conspiracy theory that we were hiding the playbook for non-conference, or at least some additional stuff that we were maybe hiding. But also some of it does lend itself to Adrian playing overly conservative, which I mean I think is obvious at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, Klein, he had a really great attack plan. This is one of the better offensive performances K-State's had in my lifetime. Over 500 total yards and left a lot of yards on the field, honestly. This is a game that K-State probably could have won by more points than it did. I'd say not a ton more because OU, to be fair, did leave some points on the field. But Klein was excellent in this game. It seemed like situational play calling was clicking on all cylinders in this game. So absolutely loved it.
Absolutely. And then the first thing to notice was we got out to an absolutely torrid start and we never trailed in this game. Which when I saw that stat, it took me a second to think about it because I'm like, oh wait, no, that's right. We actually didn't. Huh. But yeah, we ended up getting to a 14-0 start and it looked like we were gonna boat race Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah. The offense looked like it could do no wrong to start this game. It was a little shaky at first. I think Adrian had like a throw that was a little bit behind Phillip Brooks early on. But but then like third down, we pick up like a gutsy first. And then on the third down, Adrian gets another big conversion, and Benson had a nice play on that drive as well, and then end up taking it in for a touchdown. And that was only after one drive, but we came out with a plan that kind of stuck throughout the whole game. It didn't feel as much like some of maybe the like Messingham. I hate to bring up Messingham right now, but I think it's relevant. Uh,
Yes.
uh, like where he scripted great opening drives, and knew exactly how to attack opponents. But then from then on, it kind of felt like it was a little aimless for a little while. It felt like we came in with a opening drive, like skeleton of like, hey, here's what we should generally do, and we continue to do that throughout the game for the most part, with a few additional wrinkles added in, like the screens really came into play in the second half. It felt like to Phillip Brooks, but I liked the conviction that we had to stick with what was working and add to it rather than going away from what was working. We took what we had going for us and then just made additions to it that were natural within the flow of our game plan. And I felt like they were intelligent additions. I liked what we did. And again, a lot of it does come down to execution, because if we ran the same plays, but then like nothing was working and it was all drops and stuff, we'd be still angry at Klein. But a lot of the um, credit also still has to go to him for getting the team prepared with it as well.
Yeah. And also we added a QB sneak to the playbook.
We did. We did. We went back and checked the 2012 playbook before this game, and we saw the QB sneak, and we went ahead and added that in.
I wanted the clown car formation, but hey, I'll take a QB sneak.
That will come with time. We have to build it by layer. This is the foundation to the clown car, but we will get there.
All right. Next is the defense did exactly what it had to do. And Kleinerman said it best in his press conference. Oklahoma's offense is entirely based off of making you wrong no matter what. The best that you can do is hope to contain it. And again, you look at the score, it's a one-score game. One of those was a garbage time touchdown. The defense did exactly what it needed to. Aside from a couple busts in coverage and Omar Daniels getting caught looking at the quarterback a little too much and then getting toasted by Marvin Mims, which
That could have happened to anybody.
really could have. I'm still not sure I enjoy that matchup, but still, that literally could have happened to
Hmm.
anybody. The defense did exactly what it had to do.
Yeah, the defense wasn't like lights out or anything like that, but I don't think anybody expected them to do so. I think what we needed the defense to do was slow them down and get some big stops when we needed them to. And when it mattered, the defense came through and they were able to, for the most part, hold them. Yeah, there were a couple of big plays that really hurt, and we got away with a few as well. But that's part of defense, really, is getting away with whenever you do eventually mess up, because you will, uh, getting away with it. And we did. And they they did what was necessary in this game and no more. This wasn't a dominant defensive performance like we've seen, but we were never going to do that against OU because there's plenty of arguments about if this OU team is as good as they have been in the past, but they still have an electric offense.
They're still
Uh,
Oklahoma.
yeah, they're still Oklahoma. They still have some great weapons. Um, but yeah, the defense got to be proud of how they performed.
Absolutely. Then the next big story was after last week where we went 3-20 on third and fourth downs combined. This week we ended up going 10 for 19, 8 for 17 on third and 2 for 2 on fourth down, including the what was seemingly hopeless third and 16 where Adrian Martinez slid right in front of the OU yell leader and then the yell leader decided now was his time that he was going to try and enter the cipher. And then Adrian Martinez just took a bow like 10 yards away from him to score a touchdown like 3 plays later. That's so funny.
Yeah, I don't know what the objective was there for the yell leader. That was certainly something, I guess, but um, yeah, 8 for 17 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth. Can't ask for much more, especially I think setting the tone early with 2 of 3 on third down, and the one third down we didn't convert, we got the fourth down. So setting that tone early was big. And then yeah, the of course the big third and 16 run. I've watched that play probably about 10 times already.
Yeah.
Um, I've been taking study breaks just to watch the play again. I scared my cat, unfortunately, when that happened.
Oh
Maple
no,
unfortunately was
Maple.
frightened, but she will learn. It's fine.
It's
And
okay, Maple.
she'll be okay. But it was a much better performance on those third and fourths. Granted, a lot of that was better performance on first and second, I'd say, because a lot of those third and fourths were closer down in distance than what they were against Tulane. So that's better execution overall to make those third and fourths a little better. You know, of course, the third and 16 is an outlier there, but that's just a phenomenal play. So,
Yeah. And final general takeaway is quietly the kicking game looked considerably better, which we mentioned that it's been a week by week improvement with Chris Tennant. And this week he was perfect when we needed him to be. So congratulations, Chris Tennant. It seems like he's finally figured it out.
yeah, and he deserves uh to get the credit. I feel like specifically right
Yeah.
now because he there was a lot of noise and vitriol. I feel like around the kicking game in the first couple of weeks, and rightfully so to a degree. But on the flip side, when he does do well, you do need to acknowledge that, I think. So
No.
yeah, him going 2 for 2 on field goals, even if they're chip shots, still that's big in a one possession game, and then 5 of 5 on extra points. Really nice job for Chris Tennant.
Yeah, absolutely. So just give him the credit he so deserves, especially if you're one of the people like dumpstering on him. Like, first off, why? And secondly, you got to give credit where credit's due. But now let's go into the statistics for the game. I'll take passing and rushing, and Connor, you can take receiving and defense if that sounds good to you.
Fine by me.
All right. It's a signature Alleycats figuring it out in the middle of the episode. But in terms of passing, it was all done by 9 a.m. Time to wake up. Adrian Martinez, He went 21 for 34 with 234 yards with a long of 27, a touchdown, and notably, he was not sacked once. And a lot of that was, a solid offensive line performance and amazing pocket awareness on his part. And if you trust PFF, he actually had a much higher completion percentage. He had a 75% adjusted completion percentage with a drop rate of 12.5%. And before you thought that we were done with Adrian Martinez, no, we have rushing stats where he was the leading rusher on the day with 21 attempts, 148, no losses, and 4 total touchdowns, including the 55-yard scamper to basically close out the game. Deuce was 25, 123, only lost 7, so a net of 116 and only averaged 4.6, which is still good, but only by Deuce's standards. DJ Higgins got 2 carries whenever Deuce's visor was fogging up.
Is that what was happening?
Yes, because he was wiping off his visor because it was either fogging up or he got sweat in his visor and he couldn't see. Because they panned over to the sideline camera and you just see him with the towel like aggressively scrubbing the inside of his helmet.
You see, I saw him doing that, but I thought he was just like messing with it. So I figured they were just giving him a rest because he got like 4 straight carries. But that would be really funny. And I thought to his credit, he looked really good.
Yeah.
For his 2 carries,
Yeah.
especially the 12-yarder. He's going to be special, I think. And we've been
He
talking
really
about
is.
him for almost a year at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then obviously, I mean, you can't say enough about Adrian's performance.
148 on the ground.
148, yeah, is incredible. The 4 rushing touchdowns, reminiscent of Skyler's game in 2019, where he had the 4 rushing touchdowns as well. It was posted by somebody somewhere on Twitter
It
that,
was a Reddit post first.
yeah, it was a Reddit post first, and stolen, placed on Twitter, that the rush for the 4th and final touchdown for Adrian was the exact same play call that Colin Klein ran back in 2012 to take the lead for good against OU when OU was also ranked number 6. And I believe it was almost the same day when it happened as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's like
maybe,
poetry. It rhymes.
yeah, perhaps a good omen to look forward to there. But yeah, he also quietly had a great day passing. He really only had one bad throw, truly bad throw, I'd say. And that was the deep throw that was supposed to go to Malik that was just off target, but Malik
Oh
made
yeah.
an excellent defensive play
Casual
there.
offensive. No, that's just a clean hit. It's clean hit. Clean hit.
He got, I truly think it was. He got there as the ball got there. I have no
Yeah.
issue with what Malik did.
Oh, I don't
Uh
either, especially because it
yeah,
benefits us.
yeah, but that was a nice heads up play by Malik and probably what was Malik's best game in years, I'd say.
Yeah.
But and then yeah, Deuce was Deuce. He made some guys look silly. What doesn't show up on the stat sheet with Deuce is his pass protection was actually really great. Um,
Bill
he
Snyder back to spawn.
Bill Snyder he must have been loving Deuce Vaughn's game with the way that he was pass blocking. So yeah, Deuce was phenomenal. Adrian, of course, the highlight of the show, taking a bow at the end there, which I don't think many people realized was a response to Braden Willis of OU taking a bow on the previous touchdown to make it a 1 possession game. And
Yeah.
then Adrian doing that was a response. I don't think many people realize that, but
I love this team so
he
much.
didn't like that. He didn't like that.
He took exception to that.
He did. But we'll move to receiving now. There's only so much that you can say about Adrian without repeating yourself. I suppose we can kind of get into some of his other throws a little later, but
Yeah.
Ben Sinnott, he leads the way in receiving,
Wide
4 catches for
receiver
80
one, Ben
yards.
Sinnott.
He is wide receiver 1 as things stand. Until people start covering that seam route to Sinnott, then yeah. But he unironically, he did have a great day. His one big effort catch he had, I think it was the second or third quarter, where he seemingly was dragging like half the OU defense behind him. And if that's the sort of thing we can be looking forward to, it makes sense why we haven't seen as much Wheeler this season, because Sinnott, he's really been excellent thus far. Or at least in this game he was. And then Phillip Brooks, he had the most receptions on the day, but a lot of them were screens, so not as many yards available. 7 catches for 56 yards. To his credit, though, he was making a lot of times he was making something out of nothing.
Yeah.
on those screens where he's making guys miss, and he might have only gotten 2 yards, but he avoided a 4 yard loss. So kudos to Phillip Brooks. He did have at least one drop and uh, two drops, and he one of them I think was more catchable than the other because I think they're considering the early throw from Adrian a drop, even though it
Yeah.
was behind him. But in a game where you win against a big team, it's easier to forget the drops, I'll say. Um, Moving on to Malik, he had 4 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown on a slant route. I think it might be the first time I've ever seen. This is like the first time I've seen K-State run slants since Byron Pringle got like an 80-yard touchdown
Yes.
against TCU for it.
And Malik just big boyed the corner. We
He
need to
did.
like this is the first time, and this was probably one of my biggest gripes with the previous administration and its offense was that it just didn't take advantage of Malik's size. Like pause, but it didn't take advantage of the fact that Malik is a 6'4" wide receiver. He's
Yeah,
bigger than most other corners. Like he can just big boy them. And he did
yeah.
that on the slant.
Yeah, he did. That was a big effort catch. Great throw as well. Because that's a throw that to let Malik use his size, it does need to be in the right spot. And Malik, he made that catch. He also had some nice plays later. Like the catch, I think it might have been fourth quarter where he really had to leap to get it on the sideline. That was a really nice play by Adrian, rolling out to his weak side off his back foot, perfect placement. Um, Malik had a really, really nice day, I thought. Then he also had a really big kick return as well. This time he cut it inside and did not get tackled by the kicker because of it. He did still get stopped by the kicker eventually, I think, but the cut inside was actually warranted this time. Cade Warner, he had 3 catches for 26 yards. He did have a bit of a rough day, to be honest. Couple big drops for Cade, especially on what was an incredible play by Adrian. If it was a completion, it was arguably his best play of the day,
Oh yeah.
or at least his best throw, I'll say. Where Adrian's running out of the pocket because a free blitz is about to get there. He scrambles out and then on the run drops it in the breadbasket for Cade. And granted, to Cade's credit, he was covered heavily on this play. But regardless, Cade allegedly has the best hands on the team, really needs to make the catch there. It did not matter in the long run. So I'm not going to hold this against Cade permanently. But and also he is still living on goodwill from the incredible catch against Tulane, even if again it did not matter.
Yeah.
Cade did still come away with 3 catches for 26 yards and also recovered the onside kick at the end. So a nice fitting way to end that. Then Deuce had 2 catches for 13 yards. He's been pretty much bottled up in the passing game this year. Not a lot happening for him. RJ Garcia sighting. Good job, RJ. He had
Good
one
job,
catch for
RJ.
7 yards. Happy to see him get involved. I would like to see him get more targets. Some of those Phillip targets I think could also go to RJ
Yeah.
in some situations. I really want him to get the ball in space. And then Sammy Wheeler, they targeted him once, and it was simply a great play by an OU defensive back in the end zone.
Yeah.
Granted, the throw was a smidge too late. Also, Phillip was a little bit more open, a little bit further to the right, but splitting hairs. So that does it for receiving. Ace, what do you have anything to add about receiving?
No, not that we won't get into in the game day grades. No.
All right. Then I'll get into the defensive stats. Kobe Savage had 11 tackles, 8 of them solo. Really nice day for him in the tackling department in some regards. Coverage, he did let Drake Stoops get behind him once. Should have been a touchdown, honestly, but it was an overthrow from Dylan Gabriel. So he can I'll thank the football gods for that, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yes. Julius Brents, he had a pretty nice day. He had a pass breakup, played really good coverage throughout the game, and had 9 tackles with half a tackle for loss and some really big hits again. He has been hitting people with anger throughout
He
this entire year.
he
I don't know
took
what
that
changed.
he's not good in run defense stuff seriously.
Yeah,
It made
I
him
don't know what
mad.
changed. I don't know what changed for Julius, but he has become a different guy in run defense this year. Austin Moore had also 9 tackles and half a tackle for loss, although his half tackle for loss was a half sack, which he shared with Jalen Pickle. Only time we got home, only time either team got home to the QB this whole game. Josh Hayes had 8 tackles, half a tackle for loss. He had a pretty nice day, I felt. Had some really nice coverage moments as well. Cheatham, he had 5 tackles, all huge tackles. I could have sworn one of those tackles was a TFL, but I think it was right at the line.
It's right at the
Um,
line that was on a swing screen.
it was, and he made a great play there because that's probably a big play if he doesn't do
That's a
what he does
touchdown
there.
if he doesn't
Yeah,
make that play.
yeah, he was huge there. Jalen Pickle, he had 5 tackles, half a tackle for loss, and that half sack, as well as a QB hurry. Daniel Green had 4 tackles. Echo Boydo had 4 as well. Felix had 4 and half tackle for loss with a pass breakup. TJ Smith had 3 tackles and limited snaps, but honestly looked pretty good. I felt um Khalid Duke, I felt like he was doing a good job rushing the passer and making Dylan Gabriel uncomfortable. He had 3 tackles. Robert Hens had a quiet day, but he did get 2 tackles. Desmond Purnell had 2 tackles and a half tackle for loss. Don't remember who he split that with, but then Nick Allen had 2 tackles and almost got a sack. But Dunn Gabriel was just a little bit too quick. Eli Huggins had 2 tackles, both in run defense, I believe, and they were both pretty nice. Then the group of Sincere Mason, BJ Payne, Brendan Mott, Cody Stuffelbean, they all had 1 tackle. And then Uso Sayamalo had 2 pass breakups at the line of scrimmage on that last OU drive.
He's gonna be so good.
Yeah,
He's gonna be so good.
he is gonna be a monster. He already is, honestly, but he just needs to get a little bit stronger, get a little bit more of the playbook under his belt. He's gonna be phenomenal. I love seeing him get some late snaps just to put in a fresh body in the middle against those OU offensive linemen that have been playing the entire game. I like that strategy by Clanderman there, but
And
uh,
dunking on Dylan Game. He
yeah,
literally
but
just
which
dunked on him.
honestly, it's so rude of Clanderman to do that. I'd say. I mean, to say, all right, yeah, your offensive line's really tired. Like, we're just gonna put in this 340-pounder that's not played a snap this entire game. Have fun, guys.
And then
Like,
he
and he,
dunks on them
yeah, yeah,
twice.
yeah, and he was fighting through triple teams, just because of his stamina, because he hadn't been playing all game. I really, really like that. I haven't seen that spoken about much. I feel like, I mean, obviously the pass breakup's been talked about quite a bit because it was funny that it happened twice, and then he. But not a lot, I think, has been said about the strategy of subbing him in, which was there's a whole subtopic about substitutions in this game, and uh but yeah, that does it for defensive stats. I guess we can throw in Ty Zentner averaging 47.4 yards per punt on 5 punts, 2 inside the 20, 2 50 plus. He has been awesome
Lives
this
up to
whole
his
year.
name.
Yeah, Legatron is having quite the year. He had a long of 54. Granted, Michael Turk for OU had a phenomenal day as well. He had a long of 60, average 51.2. Great day for him too. Credit to him. It's easy to credit the other team's punter. So, but
Yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
feel bad doing it.
yeah. And Chris Tennant perfect on the day. 5 of 5 on PATs, 2 of 2 on field goals. Both were inside of 30, which has kind of been a kryptonite for him. So honestly, it's a bigger
It's
deal
bigger
than I
than you'd
think.
think.
Yeah, it's a bigger deal than it would be for most kickers, I suppose, is a good way to say that. But yeah, that does it for individual stats, I believe.
Yep. All that said, we can move on to game day grades. If you're unfamiliar, we go through every single position group, including the coordinators, giving them a grade from A plus to F. A plus meaning they basically single-handedly won us the game, and F meaning they single-handedly lost us the game. And as always, we're going to start with the most important position on the field, and that is the quarterback. And you know, I think maybe Adrian Martinez maybe missed a few throws out there. Shut up. He gets an A plus. Leave him alone. He
I
was
give him
responsible
yeah,
for 5 touchdowns.
yeah. I give him an A plus plus. I don't know if that's allowed, but I'm going to do it
You can
anyways
do what you
because
want. It's our show. Like, who's
yeah,
gonna stop us?
because not only did he win us this game, he did so in style and shut the haters up. So I gave him an extra plus for what I think was truly an all-time performance for K-State football.
Yeah,
Uh, so I mean, what else can you say when he goes 21 to 34 for 234 and a touchdown, and arguably, he did leave points on the field in the passing game, and then rushing. Saves the game there at the end. 3rd and 16 going 55 yards, getting the 4 touchdowns. Doesn't lose any yards rushing the ball. And a lot of that, again, is part of his pocket presence. Granted, offensive line deserves credit for that, but he, as well as pocket presence, was phenomenal against OU. He was completely dialed in.
yeah,
Uh, Not much can be said that hasn't already been said about Adrian. He only had one bad throw, but I simply don't care
yeah,
because the rest of his game was so phenomenal.
yeah. I'm just saying, if we got this Adrian Martinez every single game, Adrian Martinez would probably be a genuine, like, he'd probably finish top three for the Heisman if we got this performance from him consistently.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And this would be a team that would almost no doubt in my mind get to Arlington if we got this Adrian every single game and the
If
defense shows up every week.
if we got this Adrian Martinez every single week, I don't think Arlington is the ceiling. but
That's true. You might be right, but
but hey,
um,
that's speculation at this point. Point is, Adrian Martinez had an absolutely generational game. And he was the Adrian Martinez that we were hoping we were going to get, and maybe even a little bit more for this game. And
yeah,
especially coming off of there's another person. Well, no, I'm not going to spoil that yet, but this is the first person in the history of game day grades to go from an F to an A plus in 1 week. And I want to say that I hope that happens again, but I don't because I never want to give anyone an F again. But
fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, there's not enough that can be said about this quarterback performance. So A plus Adrian Martinez. Next up is the running back room. Now, this is one that I ended up just giving an A because it was an amazing performance. And the only thing missing from it was a touchdown. If there was a touchdown, easily an A plus. But then again, Adrian Martinez kind of vultured a few of those opportunities at the goal line.
Literally just copy paste what you said and put it under my name. You took every point that I was going to make verbatim. I gave an A as well for the exact reason that they were great, but didn't have a touchdown. And that was the only thing holding them back. So I won't linger on this too much because, I mean, Deuce still had an incredible day, 25 for 116. I mean, that's a Deuce Vaughn day. We're used to that. And then DJ Giddens was good in his handful of snaps. So,
Yeah. Next up is the wide receivers who will be receiving the lowest grade this week. But even then, they're only getting a B minus for me. Now, you may be saying that seems a little low, especially, on a day that the passing game had a lot of success. The reason why I end up giving them a B minus is not because of the Phillip Brooks drops, because one, while it would have been a touchdown, ended up being inconsequential, and the other one was like the third play of the game. The main one that concerns me is Cade Warner because first off, I never thought I would see Cade Warner burn people deep, but he did it twice. Like, I didn't think he would beat anyone deep because that's just not his game. He's more that technical, hands receiver who's going to beat you intermediate because he's a good route runner. But now he gets behind the defense twice and can't come up with either catch, even though they were really well placed. But that those happen sometimes. But the other thing that really kind of that got to me that I kept thinking about was we're used to using Cade Warner as kind of a sift blocker in the running game. And we did it once and it he just outright whiffed and it kind of looked like a little bit of an effort problem to where he just kind of didn't sift and it got Adrian Martinez flipped on a QB power, which I that Adrian Martinez is clearly a tough guy, but you still don't want your quarterback taking hits like that if you can avoid it. So, and outside of that, it was just the biggest receiving performance came from another room. And to me, it's not a bad day. It's just not that amazing day that gets you an A. So I ended up giving them a B minus.
I gave him a B for very similar reasons. There wasn't a ton wrong with what they did. K did have a big drop or two. Philip was the same. Malik had a nice day. Philip generally had a good day, but they weren't great days. They were solid days. These are the sort of days that with the receiving core you're fine with. I feel like, and so that's why they do as a room they do get a touchdown, so that's good. But they did have some big miscues in various places that prevent them from getting an A. Which I mean, all these other rooms are getting A's because they did a really great job, and this receiver room didn't do a bad job by any stretch of the imagination. They just did a good job. So B for me.
Yeah. Next up is tight ends, fullbacks, who, again, it's just such a great turnaround because, obviously Ben Sinnott, wide receiver one, 4 for 80, including
Obviously,
the grittiest, like he carried that pile for like a good like 7 yards.
all if not more, yeah,
Yeah,
that was incredible.
he was carrying, and even outside of the receiving game, they had a pretty, decent day blocking as well. And they were getting open when they needed to, especially on the inside dig route, which I honestly think that the inside dig route to Sinnott may become just a guess. I really think that that's probably going to be a signature of this offense, just because of how did the Royals win? They were down 11, but sorry, but just got that notification. um, just because of how this Klein's offense seems to like layering the routes, I really think that that dig route to Ben Sinnott will start becoming a big part of the offense. But I ended up giving the tight ends and fullbacks an A for their performance because they had a pretty good day blocking, and they had some of the well, specifically Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott had some of the most consequential, gritty, and just high effort catches of the game, like proving that we like Ben Sinnott being Ben Sinnott, like him being quiet these last couple of weeks, that was more of a fluke than anything else.
Yeah, I gave him an A as well, for pretty similar reasons again. Ben Sinnott, uh, he had obviously a great day. He was the leading receiver in terms of yardage. And yeah, this is the sort of stat line that he probably would have had the last few weeks if we had forced the ball deep a little bit more because he was breaking open several times. But he has a really, really nice day. Does a good job blocking as well. Sammy Wheeler, he did get targeted once, but didn't do a lot in the running game. Blocking, I didn't notice as many errors as I did the week prior. Christian Moore got a couple of snaps and didn't noticeably do anything wrong, so that's not going to affect the grade or anything. No Jax Deneen. It seems like Jax just kind of doesn't have a spot in this offense right now. It feels like he's kind of the odd man out because we aren't really using traditional fullback as much as we are
And when we are, it's Christian
tight ends
Moore.
H back sort of thing. And when we are, it's Christian Moore, which maybe some of that's injury, but
Yeah.
yeah, A for me for this group. They did a nice job quietly.
Yeah. Next room is offensive line. Now, the offensive line, I mentioned earlier that our offensive line did not give up any sacks this game, which is true. And I also mentioned that a lot of that was due to Adrian Martinez's pocket presence. Now, I'm not at all insinuating that the offensive line had a bad day because they ended up getting an A minus for me. But there were a few times that pass protection was a little bit iffy, and running the ball on the inside was a little bit iffy, we'll say. But against a talented front four that Oklahoma has, that's just inevitably going to happen. But with how much they bounced back from last week and how well they played together, how much that unit has truly gelled, even when one goes down. Panzer has to take a couple of seconds. BB has to take a few plays. You know, all of them end up working together in a cohesive way that keeps Adrian upright and manipulates rushes in a way to where there's always an escape route. And in the running game, they were good, especially on the outside, but the inside was a little bit shakier. That's still an A- performance, especially with a line that I don't think has any 3 stars against a line that I'm pretty sure was almost exclusively made up of 4 stars and above.
Yeah, I gave him an A minus.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason for it was that they were pretty good. I would say that they did reach A territory because they did a really nice job protecting Adrian Martinez. I felt like, uh, even though there were some times that it looked like they were getting pretty close to getting there, but they didn't allow a sack, and they blocked pretty well. So it's hard to complain too much. Dawson Delforge stepped up when Cooper Beebe went out. So he deserves a lot of credit for that too. So yeah, A minus for me for the offensive line. A big step up in effort and execution from last week.
Yeah. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. First off, with defensive line, we only got 1 sack, and again, this is another performance where 1 or 2 more sacks bumps the grade up. They ended up getting an A- from me. They were solid in run defense. Felix was getting just held the entire game, and there were a lot of plays where it just very simply did not matter, and he forced Dylan Gabriel off of his spot. And the only reason those didn't result in sacks was because that's not Dylan Gabriel's blind side. Felix would have, if Dylan Gabriel was right-handed, Felix probably would have walked away with a sack and a half this game. But outside of that, Huggy had an absolutely dominant first half and then just kind of came down to earth. Well, first quarter, he kind of came down to earth the rest of the game, really played within himself. D Hens had a couple of really good sifs on zone runs, especially one that I'm thinking of where Daniel Green, and I think it was Daniel Green, ends up whiffing. And I'm like, well, here goes a touchdown. Wait a minute. Why is D Hens out there? Wait a minute. But yeah, everyone had a really good day. When they're not getting illegally blocked into the sidelines, waiting for Joe Hall to hit a flying cross body to the best blocking tight end in the Big 12. I'm still taking Joe Hall in that fight, by the way.
Yeah, I gave him an A minus as well. They did get a decent amount of pressure, and they were getting held a lot at the game. The refs were really letting a lot go when it came to offensive line play on both sides, I felt like.
Yeah.
And
Which may have been
so
why we didn't give up any sacks.
that might have been it. That and Adrian's pocket awareness, I think, played a big part in that. But
Yeah.
it was it was a good day for the defensive line. I felt like they were the best defensive unit in my opinion, at least the most consistent, I'd say. They were pretty solid in run defense. They did their job, and you have to appreciate that. So A minus from me.
Absolutely. Next room is linebackers who, I felt the linebackers did fine, but by virtue of this offense, fine was all they could really do. So I am kind of applying a little bit of a curve here. I ended up giving them a B plus. This was not Daniel Green's best day, and I kind of didn't think it would be, just because of how this offense tended to work. But I he didn't have a bad day. Austin Moore had a pretty solid day. Austin Moore again, just he decided that he's one of the best players on the defense. Khalid Duke had a couple of pressures, a couple of really consequential rundowns in open space. But outside of that, they were lacking that really big splash play for me. So I ended up just giving them a B plus, which is, obviously great performance, but lacking big, 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 big impact.
Yeah. I gave them a B for a similar reason. They felt invisible a lot of the game. Austin Moore statistically had a really great day, but it felt like we didn't see him a ton. They're making a lot of tackles after like 5 or 6 yard carries, things like that. So they weren't unbelievably impactful, but they still played an important role, and they were in a really tough position for a lot of this game, like Ace said. So I give them a B for that reason primarily. But again, they weren't a bad unit whatsoever. That would be disingenuous to say that. So yeah, they did pretty good, I thought, but they could have been better.
Yep. Next room is defensive backs. Now, this one, This one's interesting because on one hand, Omar Daniels getting absolutely dusted by Marvin Mims. That's unfortunate. It could have happened to anybody. And busted coverage on Theo Weiss. That's unfortunate. That could have happened to anybody. But on the aggregate, I feel like at if you looked at the stats, you'll see that Dylan Gabriel had over 300 yards passing. How do you give the DBs a good grade today? Because the defensive backs, if this room was any different, if this is any other defensive back room in the Big 12 and maybe even the country outside of like Alabama and Georgia, those don't count. Those aren't college teams. Those are NFL light teams. Those don't count. Those don't count. But if you're like not counting the top tier teams, I'm not sure that there are any other defensive back rooms that can contain this offense in such a way that we did. I ended up giving them an A minus because of the performances of Kobe Savage, of Drake Cheatham, and how they were able to limit the damage outside of those busted plays. Because if you take away those busts in coverage, the bust in coverage, I believe, was like a 55-yard completion and then a 70-yard completion. That knocks him down to roughly 200 yards, which if you would have told me that outside of two big plays, we would have held them to 200 yards, I would have thought we'd blow them out by like 30. I ended up giving them an A minus.
I gave him a B. This is probably where we differentiate the most, I'd say.
Yeah.
They did have those busts and coverage that were converted, but they did have a few others I felt like that OU missed. Whether it be a bad throw or otherwise. Drake Stoops, he broke open once in like the first or second quarter, and it was a surefire touchdown, but it was just a bad throw. Then yeah, the ones that you mentioned as well, which granted that's really not Omar's fault. There should be more safety help there. Then otherwise, they did play pretty well, I felt, for the most part. Kobe Savage getting 11 tackles. Julius Brents had a great day. I felt like Josh Hayes was solid as well. Drake Cheatham, he made some very impactful tackles. Echo didn't have his brightest day, I felt like. But I gave him a B because there were more busts in coverage that did not end up mattering. But they still did play well. I do like that you say that they limited the damage, which I think they did a good job doing that. And a lot of Dylan Gabriel's yards, those came pretty late in the game when they were driving. We were playing prevent.
Dylan Gabriel is padding his stats.
Yeah, which I do think that Dylan Gabriel actually played pretty well. I came away from the game with a higher respect for him than I had going into it. I still don't think he's like the best quarterback in the Big 12 or anything, but I do think he's better than I thought that he was, which I did not have a super high opinion of him going in, to be fair. But I gave him a B, and they were not bad at all. They were pretty good, but they were not great. So I gave him a B.
On the topic of Dylan Gabriel, he's kind of who I thought he was. He's not someone who's going to make mistakes and like at least mental mistakes. So he's not going to throw a pick. He's just not going to do that. But he's a quarterback that you can win with, but I'm not sure you're ever going to win because of, if that makes sense. He's kind of like the Derek Carr of Big 12 quarterbacks.
That kind of makes sense. I feel like I get what you're getting at. You see him as like an amped up game manager pretty much. Or he can do more than most game managers can, but like he's not like a true like take your team to the promised land type of QB.
Yeah. So now we get into the offensive and defensive coordinators. And let's start off with the offensive coordinator. And I mentioned it earlier. It's such an improvement. And we get two firsts in the same episode because the second person to go from an F the previous week to actually technically he got lower than an F, but we don't talk about that grade. The lowest grade that you could possibly get to an A plus is Colin Klein, because he came out and he proved verifiably that not only can he scheme a running game and he can scheme it effectively, he can figure out how to adjust when certain plays aren't working. He knows how to not only manipulate how the defense is playing against his offense, forcing them to react in a bad way for what your play call is, But also, and I want to stress this immensely, he schemed Cade Warner open deep twice. That takes insane talent for someone who's just simply not a burner. And really, for all of the concerns that people have had, I really think that this was the game that Colin Klein got the opportunity and stepped up to the opportunity to let people know that, yes, he was the right choice. Yes, our first numbers were like, oh, Messingham was more efficient. Yeah, technically you're right. But does Messingham win this game? Does Messingham
Unlikely.
does Messingham scheme up things as well as he does? Does he manipulate box counts as well as Colin Klein does? No, he doesn't. This was a uniquely great Colin Klein performance, and th- this is what this is better than his Texas Bowl performance. He gets an A+ from me.
Yeah, I gave him an A+ as well. There's really no other grade to give him, I think, after the way that the offense performed. His play calling was great. I liked his adjustments in game, going to the screens and the latter portions of the game to just get the free access yards. Um, it was a really nice choice that still allowed us to continue within what we were doing, but just add another dimension to it after OU made adjustments for those, just to give them another thing to think about. That was a really nice choice. And then, of course, the touch of pettiness with calling the same play that he ran. I mean, there's no way you can't give him an A+ after that. But and then of course, getting Adrian Martinez to perform at this level and getting him comfortable to do that, he deserves a ton of credit for that. Him and Coach Kleiman, they both deserve a ton of credit for that. So A+.
Absolutely. And then the next one is Joe Klanderman, the defensive coordinator. And this is the lowest grade that I've given Klanderman this year. But again, a lot of that is by virtue of he said it himself. This defense, you're always wrong. There's nothing that there's no way to be right 100% of the time playing defense against anybody. But Oklahoma's goal was to make you wrong more than 60, 70% of the time. With that said, I feel like Klanderman called one of the best games that he possibly could have without completely shifting the schematics of K-State's defense. I ended up giving him an A- because there were just a couple of times where I'm like, okay, that's the coverage call here. You're gonna play off coverage when you know they're probably going to run like that speed dig or that quick slant. It's like, I mean, I guess that's fine, but you can't like I ended up giving him an A- because there are a couple of times that he could have schemed up pressure a tiny bit better. A couple of times in busting coverage, which yes, when it happens more than once, I'm inclined to kind of push that on like, okay, that's the coordinator. You kind of need to talk to your guys there, like make sure that stuff only happens once. But there's not a whole lot that I can complain about that isn't just nitpicky. So I ended up giving him an A-.
I gave him an A- as well. Uh, he did call a good game, like you said. I think he called one of the better games that he could have called. He did a good job in keeping OU at arm's length. Even when they did seem like they were going to come storming back in the first quarter when they got those two big scores, but but Klanderman, he was really good. I felt like at adjusting, doing just enough to keep OU from really getting back into the game. So he does deserve a lot of credit for that. Like you said, could have been a little bit better. But that is splitting hairs, which is a little bit unfair to him. But to be fair in the grading, he does get an A-.
Yeah. So that's game day grades. And now we get into answering the questions from the pregame. And first one's funny. Does Colin Klein recover from an abysmal performance?
Oh, gee, Ace. I don't know. Did he? Did he,
I don't,
Ace?
I think you can make a pretty convincing argument that, yeah, he did. Just copy and paste everything we said during the game day grades section.
Yeah, no need to linger on that. He was awesome.
Next question. To take advantage of Oklahoma's zone coverages, does he implement more timing routes? Not necessarily timing routes, but he did use a little bit more clear out routes, which is another way to attack the zone coverages that Oklahoma really likes to run, with that and screens. Because by virtue of zone coverage, you're not always going to have a hat on a hat in the screen game. So if you see like 3-on-3, you throw the bubble. If you see 2-on-3, you throw the bubble. And that's just another great way to take advantage of zone coverage. And he did it. So no to the question, but he did something better.
Yeah. Copy paste what you said. Not a lot to add there, but yeah, he had a great offensive attack.
Can Adrian revert to even half of his Nebraska self? He was double his Nebraska self.
I was about to quote you from earlier because you did say that earlier. You said how about double, and that's exactly what we got. We got Adrian's best performance of his entire career. So yeah,
And
yeah,
his favorite game he's ever played, according to him.
yeah. Pretty nice to hear that, and he gave a really good interview after as well. It seemed pretty genuine. Of course, we're looking at that through purple tinted glasses.
Yeah.
But he did talk about how he thinks it's special what's being built here. I hope he's right.
Me too. That'd
But
be cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He did. He was that and more. Like I said,
Over under on deep completions of 2.5. I think his long was 27, and I consider deep to be 25. So I think he actually hit the under, but it barely matters.
yeah. It's tough to say that he had one deep, but he did hit intermediate a lot. He hit that really well. Going deep, he at least according to PFF, which they consider to be 20 plus, he was 1 for 5 for 27 yards. Granted, there was a Cade Warner drop.
Two of those were K drops, I think.
Oh yeah, what was the other one then? So I can only think of the like over the shoulder on the run. But I don't recall what the other one was. I believe you. I just don't remember it. But
Oh, the other one
um,
might have been credited as a pass breakup because he got his hand in.
oh, that's it. Yeah, because I was yeah, I almost forgot about that play. I couldn't remember if that actually happened or not because it looked almost identical to like a Dalton Schoen touchdown from like 2017.
Yeah.
And Cade Warner is Cade Warner and Dalton Schoen's Dalton Schoen. I'll let you read between the lines. And they
Gym rat, real hard worker.
yeah, the lunch pail type of kid. Their numbers are similar. That's what I was getting at, 83 and 85. But it was really close. And that one was just missed. I think you're right. They credited that as a pass breakup, but yeah. So under, but it didn't matter.
Yeah. Does Deuce have to carry this team to victory? No.
Not at all. He had a great game,
Yeah, he didn't
but
carry us.
was not necessary. Absolutely not necessary. Adrian carried this team all the way to the promised land here.
Will the offensive line have a better week after a hiccup against Tulane? Yes.
Yep.
Sure did.
They sure did. Moving on.
Can K-State's defense defend another RPO-based team?
Kind of.
Satisfactorily.
Yeah. They didn't not defend them all, I'll put it like that. They definitely attempted and did a decent enough job for most of the game.
What will K-State's coverage approach be versus this talented receiving group? Barring the one bust in coverage, drop the corners back, have the safeties play those intermediate zones, or in sometimes Khalid Duke. At least if I'm remembering correctly. Again, sometimes memory goes fuzzy, and other times angle zooms in on Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, that is true.
I would still do disgusting things for all 22.
You know what, Ace? I hope somebody's listening. I hope that someday you are able to get that all 22.
Last question. More importantly, win, lose, or draw, do we at least show life?
I would say
yeah, we did.
Seems so. I would say that it comfortably seems like a yes to that question. They definitely showed a lot of life in this match, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. Kleiman deserves a ton of credit for getting the team right. That seems like one of Kleiman's specialties. It's like a perk he has.
He has the coaching perks.
Yeah, where like after a bad loss, if you're facing like a ranked team, you get like +5 to all attributes or something, and like double motivation or something. But
Yeah, everyone starts hot.
everybody starts hot for big games. That's kind of a Kleiman specialty. It seems like he's 3-1 against AP top 10. I believe I saw, with all three of the wins being OU, and then I think the other loss also being OU.
Yeah, I
So
think it was. I mean, it's just OU. It's just
yeah. So although Oklahoma State, there's a shot that'll be a top 10 matchup. They snuck in this week. So might get more opportunities with that. But
there's a legit chance that that's like a top 10 team. It's like that's a dual top 25 matchup.
yeah, there's actually a pretty good shot of that. But
Give us
we'll
Big
see.
Noon. I want Gus Johnson. I'll be at the game, but I still want Gus Johnson.
I want Gus Johnson so when the highlights happen and Adrian has a huge run, I can listen to Gus Johnson yell about it. That's why I want Gus Johnson. Because he's there.
Loose. He is loose.
He coined that. I think people forget that
And
sometimes.
people
But
forget about that. Like
because
the
Gus Johnson called, I think, the first two K-State games that year because they were both big noon. It was K-State Arkansas State and K-State OU, and we got both of them somehow.
yeah, loose. He is loose. I still don't think anything will ever like as much as I love all of Gus Johnson's touchdown calls. I don't think anything will ever stick out in my mind as much as him saying touchdown Sparty. There's something special about that one. I don't know why.
Fair enough. I mean, whenever I think of Gus, I don't even think of football. I think of the Sweet 16 game against Xavier
That's
with
fair.
K-State. That's why I always think of with Gus.
Yeah. Anyway, next up is MVPs. Offensive MVP is Adrian Martinez.
I mean, it's obviously Adrian. He dropped it in pretty much every single throw. He was making incredible throws. A lot of times he was making great touch passes that were just over outstretched hands. He was taking significantly more risks in this match, in this game. I don't know why I keep saying match, in this game, than he had any prior week. He was making big throws constantly. It seemed like he was obviously had a ton of big runs, 4 touchdowns, and the long 55-yarder. He was excellent, and he deserves this MVP. Of course, this is what I get for going back on my promise of picking him every week until he got it. The very week I stop, he ends up getting the MVP. But yeah,
That just means you can never pick him again.
that's true. Actually, I'm never picking Adrian again. Actually, like, with the expectation that he will do this every single week now. So
Yeah. And now defensive MVP. This is actually one that we had quite a bit of back and forth over. I think both of our finalists were safeties, but we ended up picking different safeties, I believe.
I picked a corner.
Oh, you picked a corner. Oh, okay. I ended up picking Drake Cheatham. And it's not just because he had the highest PFF grade, but he was legitimately like just throughout the Kobe Savage had more counting stats. That's objectively true. Julius Brents had more counting stats. He had 9 as opposed to 5. But every single tackle that Drake Cheatham made was of insane consequence, like on the swing pass, for example. But outside of that, a lot of times when you didn't notice Drake Cheatham on the field, that's because he was off in the middle of nowhere locking down a receiver deep. And he was taking those one-on-one matchups. He's like, all right, fine, I can do it. I picked off a guy against Texas A&M. Big schools don't scare me. And, he credit to him. He had an absolutely amazing game. So he's going to be my pick for defensive MVP.
Yeah. He had a great day. I went with Julius Brents for my MVP though. A lot of it's because he's continued to just out of absolutely nowhere just like commit battery against every single like person with the ball that he faces, intentionally causing harmful or offensive contact to the person of another. Yes, I'm so sad I have to know that, but he's been a little different in run support. It feels like this year he's been hitting so hard. He had great coverage a lot of the time. There was a throw where he had blanket coverage and Mims didn't make the catch, and the commentators were like, "Oh, that's a catch he normally makes." I'm like, "Is it though?" Like that was kind of blanket coverage,
I
and
mean,
Julius really played well there. And I don't know, I felt like there was a lot of highlights where Julius his size was so important in this game, to where he was able to do a little bit extra to make Dylan Gabriel have to account for his long arms and the fact that he's like 6 foot whatever,
He's
it's
6'4".
four, yeah, and he had to change the calculus a little bit for Dylan Gabriel whenever Brents was out there in zone, and that caused him to miss at least one throw. So I went with Julius. He also had 9 tackles, which was a really, really nice performance for an outside corner. So yeah, he was great.
He
But
also
again,
had
deep
some amazing
defensive,
trash talk.
he did. He's one of those corners that never uses his mouthpiece so he can talk. But yeah, he was one of a few, I think, solid picks in the secondary. Cheatham was another. Savage was another. Uh, you could have even made an argument for Hayes. Uh, but yeah, I'll say Julius Brents, offensive MVP.
Now we can get into the final segment, which is takeaways from the game. And the first one is when this team is on, oh boy, they are dangerous. And it's not just on defense, it's when the offense is clicking. This is an insanely complete team that I can't. This is a team that very easily could separate itself from the rest of the Big 12 if this is a performance we can start to expect. I'm not ready to say that this is the performance we should begin to expect. I'm not ready to say that yet. It's been one game. And as reactionary as I am, I'm not ready to do that. But if it is, we easily separate from the rest of the pack.
Yeah. Yeah. This was an incredible game for this team. They did it against a great opponent on one of the biggest stages that you could imagine. Primetime against Oklahoma on a national network. It was the game on at the time, and at least as far as I recall, I don't know if there was another big game happening
Not
around
really.
then. It was the game, and it was a great game. K-State took the opportunity to put on a show in front of a national audience and show that they belonged, and that the Tulane game was an aberration as opposed to the norm. At least we're hoping so. And yeah, like you said, when this team is clicking and they're reaching their potential, this is the team that we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season. I think everybody was starting to get a little antsy about that, and understandably so after the Tulane game. I mean, we were too. We thought that maybe the calculus for the season was going to change, but you know, if you're going to lose a game, lose it in non-conference, because it's the conference record that matters when you're trying to get to Arlington. So, yeah.
And I never had college football playoff like dreams anyway. So
That would be a cherry on top. So,
I mean, with an expanded playoff, maybe someday. I think that okay. Hot take, completely unrelated to anything. If Kleiman stays through the expanded playoff system, I think the K-State makes the playoff at least twice in his tenure.
I agree. I think that'd be fair. I mean, 12 teams. I think that's doable. Because I mean,
Anyway,
you're pretty much expecting him to make or heavily compete for 2 Big 12 titles. Assuming, and I say heavily compete, I mean make it to Arlington. So
yeah.
and with what he's shown for program building, I think that that's fairly realistic, I'd say.
And also who we have coming in at quarterback, but
Yeah. Which another thing to be said about this game is everything that we were doing. I was like, man, Avery Johnson could definitely do this, right? I was having that thought multiple times in the game. Like Adrian Martinez, I was like, that's the sort of play that I would want out of Avery Johnson. Not night in, night out. That's a way too high a bar to clear. But he was making throws, and the way he was running, I was like, this is what I ultimately want Adrian or Avery Johnson to be. So sorry to derail there, but that was a thought that I had that I forgot to mention earlier. And just I can totally see why this scheme becoming the scheme seemed to be kind of the difference maker in that recruitment in the long term. Because if I'm Avery Johnson, I see that happen, and I'm like, yeah, I can definitely do that. Like that's his jam right there. The mobile quarterback with a strong arm that's willing to take risks and also needs to make plays with his legs. A true athlete. This is like a mid 20 teens TCU QB,
yeah.
but like better passing, I guess. But
yeah. But yeah, next takeaway is Klein is more than capable as an offensive coordinator when he has an open playbook.
Are we just rolling with the theory that they really just wanted to hold the playbook back until conference play?
Oh, no,
'Cause
no, no. I think Tulane, I think he got in his own head and I think he got smoked. But for MU and South Dakota, I think their playbook was mostly closed. No, Tulane, he just got smoked, but that
yeah,
happens.
yeah, that's fair. But yeah, he was confident as a play caller, it seemed. And part of that was getting Adrian Martinez to believe in himself to throw downfield, it seems like. Which I mean, obviously that helped a great deal. But yeah, when Klein has a, a tool chest filled with the weapons that this offense can provide him, clicking and buying into the scheme, then he's going to call great games, which I don't think that's too controversial to say because we've seen it before. But seeing it again this season with a new QB and some new personnel, it's helpful.
Yep. Next up is the O line actually has more depth than we thought it would, and this was without Andrew Langang. So that's good. I like depth.
Yeah, I like that too. And then of course Lane Gang is the future. So not even including him in the equation, that only adds to the depth.
Yep. Next up is Adrian Martinez. Take a bow, son, both figuratively and literally, right in the face of Oklahoma fans and that really obnoxious yell leader. But that was an amazing performance, and like I said, like we've been saying, if he keeps that up, he's an all Big 12 pick, easy.
Oh yeah, no doubt. If he continues this, he is definitely all Big 12. He again taking the bow. Gotta love it. It's he deserves to be able to have some swagger like that in the middle of the game. The post from last night with K-State with the picture of Adrian bowing, it's got over 10,000 likes on Twitter right now. And they posted the video of it again,
At
like
9 a.m.
at 9 a.m. exactly. Uh, and gotta love that because it actually was posted last night, and I sent it to a friend, but by the time it got to them, the post had been deleted, and they were like, "What did you just send me?" And I was like, "It was just there, I swear." But um, I believe the slow mo video. I believe I saw somebody from K State creative team posted. I can't remember their name. First name Alec, I believe. But yeah, great shots. Creative teams been getting some great shots this year, like the DJ Giddens fireworks
Yeah,
post.
to
That was really good.
Malik there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's yeah, 9 a.m. Take a bow. You earned it.
Gonna skip the next one because we kind of mentioned it. It was literally just this team will not be denied when the cards are down. The final one is Arlington's still very much in the cards. In fact, we're second in the conference right now. We're
Yeah,
not going to talk about who's at first because they haven't played anybody, but
yeah.
but
Arlington. That's not a like a something that's far out. I
it's
feel
not
like.
far fetched.
Yeah,
It's not like a pipe dream. It's at this point, it kind of seems like an expectation. And I think
yeah.
it's an expectation in the locker room too.
Yeah, as it should be. And a lot of that is going to come down to can this team maintain this level of preparedness and performance week in, week out, which it's going to be hard because there's not a gimme in the Big 12 this year. They've got Texas Tech at home, which going to the year we would have called a gimme, but they just played a
Nope.
great game against Texas. They are not a gimme whatsoever. KU, that's not going to be a gimme. No matter what we say about who they've played thus far. At
No, it's not going to be.
minimum,
It's not going
at
to be a gimme
minimum, it's
anymore.
not a
They're
pushover
competent.
game.
They're
Yeah,
competent now, and it's upsetting.
offensively, offensively they do have a brain. Defensively, I'm completely unconvinced.
No,
But
no, no, the defense is still
yeah,
awful, but
yeah. But there's not going to be an easy game here. I mean, TCU they've been pretty good this year as well. Max Duggan has really taken the reins there with Chandler Morris injured. There's not an easy opponent this year in the Big 12, and so K State they might be playing. If you count the Big 12 as a division, this is probably a top four, maybe three division in all of college football. Uh, it goes top to bottom. It's really good. So, I mean, every non-conference opponent that we faced is not as good as the teams are going to be facing in the Big 12, I'd say.
it's the
And
Big 12 is going to be a bloodbath.
it is. And there's going to be a lot of cannibalization, and the national media narrative is going to be that the Big 12 is just a mediocre conference and they keep beating each other because of it. I'd posit that it's just because there's a lot of really good teams in the Big 12, and that's why. But that's not going to be the national narrative because you see, when the SEC does it, it's just because all the teams are good and it's like so hard to win week in, week out. I'm applying that same logic to the Big 12 because I think the Big 12 is going to be really great this season, which is weird that we get that treatment for basketball, not for football. But that's beside the point.
Yeah. You have any final thoughts?
This was a incredibly fun, entertaining game to watch. It feels like a lot of times in these entertaining games in the past for K-State, we did not come out on top. In the Kleiman era, this is now the third win over OU over a big opponent. We're beating these great teams more often than we have in the past, dropping a few more head scratchers, but I have to hope by year 4, Kleiman has figured out how to keep the team up for these games so that we don't have a letdown. Granted, Tech is in the exact same boat that we are, where they've got a potential letdown game on the road here. I think both teams see this as a trap game, which is going to be really funny.
Because giving credit to Texas Tech, their strength of schedule blows ours out of the water.
Yeah, that is true. Other than the game we just played, but they're non-con, without a doubt. Nothing else to add.
Yeah.
Other than it really, really sucks that the game is at 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus. I mean, what a blunder.
That is. On one hand, I can't blame them because who would have really thought that this would have been a consequential matchup at all? But
the Aggieville Alleycats, obviously, who never for a second doubted the outcome of this game. Quit making that face, because you know that we never once doubted the outcome of this game. We always were in the camp of victory.
Am I gonna have to go back and revoke the history there? Am I gonna have to delete the episode of the Oklahoma preview?
What episode?
All right, pal. There is no war in Bossing say. But last thing I'll say is go Cats. And the next week, like you said, it is the Texas Tech Red Raiders at home. One of 2 Big 12 schools that I genuinely consider to be friends. So unfortunately, we must do what we must do. But
you hate to see it, but it's got to be done.
Sorry, gambling gauchos. But that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to follow or contact the show, we are at Aggieville Alleycats on Twitter. That's capital A, and capital C in cats. If you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I am at Connor Broutstor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, where you can find such designs as Play Sandstorm Cowards, the staff-approved Doomtang Clan, and Neon Alleycats. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.